Every iteration of the Forza Horizon games has always been met with how do you do better than this the next time around? Developer Playground Games have seemingly perfected the open world racing game every single time that they've tried it. And following Forza Horizon 3 set in Australia, it was kind of hard to see where they could go next with it that would elevate it rather than iterate upon it. And somehow, once again, they've done it here. Forza Horizon 4, to me, before I get into why, it is the best open world racing game ever made. It is one of the most enjoyable open world games ever, and it just solidifies itself as one of the core staples as of racing games in general. Forza Horizon 4 takes its way to Great Britain and takes with it the English countryside as well as some urban areas, and the main city being Edinburgh. The world itself isn't as diverse as Australia, which had tropical and city and desert. Here you have countryside and city, but it is absolutely beautiful. The engine, the Turn 10 engine that they use, has been just built on in this generation to such an incredible degree that on Xbox One X it is absolutely stunning. Now you have two modes on Xbox One X, which is quality and performance. For the sake of this review, I moved it over to performance, which makes the output at 1080p 60 frames a second with some settings turned down. On quality mode it goes up to 4K 30 with added visual enhancements, and I have to say it is unbelievably beautiful at 4K 30. But I do think that the best way to play it is 4K 60 on a PC, if your PC can handle it. However, the game is incredibly well optimized, so if you have a decent rig it may be possible, but regardless, if you're even on a base Xbox One, this game still looks fantastic. It's just console wise it's definitely best on Xbox One X. Playground Games with the Forza series, they've made the Horizon has usually been a yearly thing, like it happens once a year, you're there to celebrate the Horizon Festival. Here they've made it an all-round year thing, and the reason why they've done that is that Forza Horizon 4 introduces seasons, and the first 4 or 5 hours feels almost like a massive tutorial as they introduce you to all the different race types like drag, like street racing, like dirt, the showcase events and so much more, like speed traps, speed zones, drift zones. There's a lot of different activities to do here, big and small. But the opening few hours you'll build up influence, and as you do that you'll hit certain milestones and eventually go through the 4 seasons. And the 4 seasons are definitely not just a visual thing. It's not just, oh, there's leaves on the ground, it's quite brown, it's autumn, or hey, there's snow on the ground, it's winter. It changes the gameplay to the extent that during the winter there's a massive lake that's frozen over, which you can now visit, or at least drive on. And even stuff like spring and summer, they do an incredible job of really getting that sense of the seasons, which is kind of unusual to say, like, but a cold brisk winter morning definitely looks different to a summer morning or a spring morning, and I think they've done an excellent job, and they've captured the skybox of each of those seasons and implemented it so well into the game that like you really get the sense of it being that season. And that's one of the sort of smallest things I guess about a game, but at the same time it's done so well, it's just, it has to be mentioned. But once you go through those first few hours, the seasons are no longer connected to your personal progress. Instead you're then entered into this essentially open world multiplayer lobby, where seasons change every single week, which does bring you back to the game. And having only played the game now for a couple of weeks, I haven't had the chance to sort of see all the unique aspects to these seasons once it's in the shared world. You have exclusive events so far for each season, as well as exclusive barn finds, and barn finds from return from previous games where they will give you an area on the map to look for a barn, and in it will be an old or classic or really powerful car. Once you find that, after a few minutes or whenever, you will then have that car added to your garage. It seems like with the seasons here, once the season goes away you have to wait a few weeks for that car to be claimed again. But they do such a great job, to be honest, of making this shared world or open multiplayer world so much more enjoyable than I was expecting. We've had open world shared multiplayer racing games with stuff like The Crew before, Test Drive Unlimited, Burnout, but I think here they've done such an incredible job of it. You have things like Forzathon Live, which may sound a bit silly, but what happens is every single hour a part on the map opens up for you to go to, and everyone